All right. Hello, everyone. We're live. I think I originally scheduled this for 1:30, so apologies. I was ready to go. I was ready to get after it. So let's get after it. I want to work on Blueprint today. So we're in Blueprint, and seems like we're already up to date. Interesting. I feel like I've made some changes recently. Okay, so if you've watched me do any of these streams before, especially around Blueprint, I like to kind of just jump in and see kind of the current state of the repo. I don't manage a lot of packages. Blueprint's really the only one, definitely the only one of any kind of like real traction. I think it's about to pass like 10 million downloads or something. So that's pretty good for me. Again, I don't make a lot of packages, so that's pretty awesome. So I kind of like to just come in here, refresh myself on kind of the state of the project. It's just me working on it for the most part. Of course, there are community contributions, but I'm just trying to see like, so there's nothing that everything out here is tagged. So that's good. There's no new work that's pending to be tagged. Let's go take a look at kind of the active issues. Most of these are old and we've gone through before. So a lot of these that are like enhancements or that I've marked community, honestly, like they're not things that I personally care about. And again, being kind of the sole maintainer of Blueprint, probably means it's not something I'm going to do. So if the community wants to work on this enhancement, here's some with good first issues and all sorts of stuff. I feel like awesome, great. I'm not personally going to work on those. My focus here are new features to support new things in the language, and then of course bugs. So let's take a quick look at these bugs. I don't like to see bugs here, so let's go take a look. In general, like as a user, as a developer, if I come across a project that like normally I don't necessarily dive into their issues unless they haven't made a tag in a long time, and then I go into the issues to see how like active the project is. And I don't want to like when I jump over to the issues tab on any package, I don't want to see the first two things say bug. So let's see if we can get these cleaned up. Let's see what's going on here. Belongs to many relationship, not using alternative name as pivot relationship name. I feel like I've fixed this before. I feel like I've fixed this like 18 times. Let's see what's going on here. Okay, so customer belongs to many customer. Pet. Customers here should be owners. How in the world does it know? How does it even know to be? Does it know that? I guess it's because it's this. What does the documentation say? Sometimes there are things that are like not documented. Let's look at model relationships. Let's see where this syntax. Okay, so you may also alias any of the relationships to give them a different name by suffixing the model name with a colon. Okay, for example, kaboom. Okay, Blueprint will automatically pluralize the alias. In the case of belongs to many, an alias will be used as the pivot. Okay. So belongs to many. In the case of belongs to many relationship, an alias will also be used as the pivot table name. Okay. All right. I think the thing to do is to take their draft file and let's just see what happens. It seems like the documentation claims that this is the way it works. So this does seem like a legitimate bug. That's kind of what I'm figuring out first. So let's get into like L12 hacks. And what do we have in here? Do I have Blueprint? PHP Artisan Blueprint init. It's not exploding. Okay, so there's some weird stuff going on here. Let me nah all this, I think. Yes. Let's just nah everything. And let's try that again. Okay, trace two models. Cool. Let's just, I don't need to get all fancy here. Let's just vim into the draft file. Oh, okay, we did generate some stuff before. Okay, so let's paste that. Wow, that is not at all what I expected you to do. All right, there we go. I think that's better. Let's go away. There we go. I think this is still off. This should be much less indented. Let's see here. 1, 2, 3. Oh, it's got tabs. That's why. 1, 2, 3, 4. I guess there were tabs in the input from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This is annoying. 1, 2. All right, I think that maybe is okay, unless these are still tabbed out. Let's just run this and see what it generates. So PHP Artisan Blueprint build. Okay, it made a customer factory, a pet factory. It made a create customers table, a create pets table, a create customer pet table, and then a create owner table. I don't even know. Honestly, I don't use belongs to many very often. What is this supposed to look like? This is crazy. So from the blueprint documentation, I don't know if you're familiar with the belongs to relationship or belongs to many relationship. Let me know what you would have expected here. But according to this, it says in the case of belongs to many relationship, an alias will also be used as the pivot table name. Now, I don't know about you, but I would have thought the pivot table was this. I guess I would have expected this to say create owner pet table. I see this create owner table, which is interesting. Like, where did that come from? That seems strange. Why do we have an owner table? Let's go look at these migrations. We might spend the whole stream on this one little bug. This is like deep stuff, though. Let's see here. Okay, so we have ID. We have a customer. Okay, fine. And we have a pet. That's fine. And then, okay, so this to me is the pivot table. Customer pet. This is the pivot table. LMNOP. So what I would have expected here, what I would have expected is that. And I don't know what the heck owner table is. Oh. No, that's not. Is that right? Customer pet. Okay, belongs. Okay. Okay. I think I'm starting to see. I think I'm starting to see what's potentially wrong here. I think they're kind of like having they're trying to have a bi-directional relationship. And they've only named it a single direction on one side. And I think that's confusing Blueprint, because if you look at these are exactly the same. It did make owner. Now I think this probably should have been called create owner pet table based on the documentation and the heart of the bug. And then also in the bug, I think theoretically this direction should have been owners. Belongs to many, related as customer, table owner. See, that seems weird. Something about the relationships here feel weird. I'm having trouble like seeing the real world app in my head. Let's go to Laravel and let's look at belongs to many. Let's look at their example. Belongs to many. All right. Oh, I'm hearing stuff in the chat. Let's see what you all are saying. Hi, dude. Hey, Nuno. Thanks for joining. Greetings from Switzerland. Hello, hello. Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining. Cool. Nuno's here. Hi, Nuno. Cool streams, man. I watch them every now and then. You stream kind of during my family time, though, so I only jump in for like 5 or 10 minutes at a time. So, but they're good. Good energy. Okay, let's see if we can kind of like, again, I don't use these very often, so let's just kind of read through their example of the belongs to many relationship. So is it belongs to many, many to many? Is that true? I don't know if that's true. Oh, look, I love it. One to many inverse belongs to. No. This is deeper. This is like a, I think this is like, it's not a has many, but it's belongs to many. Here we go. Model structure. Many to many relationships are defined by writing a method that returns the result of belongs to many. The belongs to many method is provided. Great. For example, let's define a roles method and a user model. Makes sense. A user can have multiple roles, so I get that. Okay, so a user belongs to many roles. They can have multiple roles. Okay, once the relationship is defined, you may access the user's roles, of course. Okay, since all the relationships, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so to determine the table name of the relationship, Eloquent will join the two in alphabetical order, the singular version in alphabetical order. So again, this is where if you're using an alias, according to the docs, we should make owner pet, not customer pet. Okay, so again, potential bug there. In addition, the customizing of the name of the intermediate table, you may also customize the column names of the keys on the table. See, I don't think we intended to do that. I think this is wrong. Defining the inverse, okay, if you define the inverse of the many, you should define a method on the related model which also returns. Okay. Here's the way I think this should look based on how it actually works, but also the aliasing. Here's what I think. I think that this is what the developer that submitted the bug expects. I think they expect this, right? And then from a Laravel application perspective, I think this is incorrect. And I think this should be create owner pet, and the name of this should technically be create owner pet. Again, alphabetical of the model. So LMNOP, owner pet. They're not attempting to customize the IDs. They're not attempting to do any of that stuff. And I think that you would not need to specify this. I don't think you need to specify the table name here because Laravel potentially knows. We can look down about the aliasing part. Retrieving intermediate, okay, yeah. Customizing the pivot attribute name. Okay, so as previously noted, the intermediate table may access on models via a pivot attribute. However, you are free to customize the name of the attribute that better reflect the purpose. Okay, for example, if your application contains users that may subscribe to a podcast, you may wish to call, okay, subscription, okay. On the custom intermediate table attribute, yeah, okay. So, you would get owners, but if we get down and it belongs to many, the table, let's see how Laravel figures out this table. I think it will work. I know for belongs to, it's based on this. I'm curious the belongs to many, how that works. So let's see where table, okay, so if is null table, this joining table. So if no table name was provided, we can guess it by concatenating the two models using underscores in alphabetical order. The two model names are, okay. So it takes the instance and it takes related, and it just joins them. It doesn't look at the calling name. Yeah, guest belongs to many relation. Where does this come from? Oh, belongs to many. Okay, weren't we just here? Did I click into the wrong spot? If no relationship name was passed, we will pull back traces to get the name of the calling function. We will use that function name as the title of this relationship, since that is a great convention to apply. Okay. Get belongs to many relation. Okay, array first backtrace. So this is going to go back and it basically looks at the function name to get the caller. So that gets the relation because we didn't pass it in. So the relation is owner, and then that gets passed down here as related. Whereas related, it actually, oh, related is just that. Okay. Okay, so we are gonna need to set the owner. Wow, I stepped into like a landmine of a issue here. This is all sorts of lame. I do think because we're customizing, I see what you're saying in the chat, but I do think because we are customizing the name, I actually do think we need to specify it here. So, two things. I think this is actually closer than it might feel, but I think the way this actually is going to need to look is owner pet. I don't think Laravel gets that right. I mean, we don't have to guess. We don't have to guess. Why are we guessing? Why are we guessing? Let's run it. Let's run it, right? What are we doing here? What are we doing here, developers? Let's just run it. PHP artisan, tinker. We're gonna need, I don't even think we need, we could just say customer factory create customer. What do you mean no customer? You're right here. You're right there. What do you mean there's no customer? Composer, dump, auto load. Maybe. I haven't had to do that in a long time. I did nab a bunch of files. Let's see what's going on here. Let's try this game. There it is. Yeah. Yeah. I think it's such a hacky project. I don't think that would be a very common issue, but that's what happened. Okay, so I think if we say customer owners. No, wait, it's on pets. Is it on pets or owners? It's on pets. Sorry. Let's go the other way around. Pet poet pet equals pet factory create. Okay, now we can say pet owners explosion. There you go. So it looked for it. What did it look for it on? It looked for it on customer pet. It's going to guess based on the strict model names. Other methods actually do look at the backtrace. Other methods do look at the backtrace, but I think for the more complex thing where it's joining up a pivot table, it's a subtle nuance between how it actually works. It's kind of like, I would argue that it should have probably figured that out personally, because it figures it out on other relationships. But you know, we're on like Laravel 12 now. We're not gonna go change in that. So. Okay, so let's just roll with it. So what has to happen then is this needs to be owner pet. Okay? You have to specify it. Whoa. Okay. Let's rerun Tinker because we changed the app. Let's build another pet. And let's do owners, and we just get null now. So it knows where to look. And again, we've manually changed some things here. So let's go back and review what we manually changed to determine which pieces of this are actually a bug. And honestly, here's the main kicker of the bug. It did a couple things wrong. First of all, it generated, let's make some notes. let's make some notes. So I do see, or well, we might not actually put this through. So first things first, it generated 2 pivot table migrations. One of the normal Laravel name, customer pet, and then it used the alias alone to generate the other one. So that's where it generated the owner only table. Now what it should have done was owner pet instead of customer pet and left it alone. Shouldn't have generated 2, just 1, and kind of merged together. The contents of the table was correct for both of them, but the table naming was wrong. 2, it needs to change the relationship method name. Okay, so change relationship method name, and then finally it needs to add the table attribute. So add table attribute to belongs to many call. Okay? So here's what we're going to do. What time is it? Here's what we're going to do. Took a minute to figure out what's going on there, but here's what we're going to do. We're going to go back to Blueprint. We're going to leave these files here. We're going to go back to Blueprint. Let's set up a failing test fixture for the migrations, because I think that's where the biggest issue is. And then we'll set up a failing test fixture for the models. And we'll just basically copy the files from this hacks application. So running it live here was nice to see that it actually worked. This is the code that's going to generate. So now they're going to serve as test fixtures back in the Blueprint project. So let's go get it done. So we got Blueprint. There we go. Let's get the issue number here just for convenience. So here we go. Let's go back to where we were. Git checkout -b issue kabam. All right. And let's start making up some fixtures here. So if we look at the fixtures, we have a migrations folder. Look at all these belongs to many. How did we mess this up? All right, so what do I need to call this? Belongs to many. This is kind of like an aliased pivot table is really what we're getting after here, right? Is that kind of what the documentation calls it? Do they use the word alias here? Alias. This seems to be a little. They definitely use the word alias, but not in the context that I'm thinking. What do they call it here? So we have here, oh, this is the new eager loading stuff. It's just a fixture. I'm okay calling it an alias. All right, let's move. What do we need to move? Let's move in L12 hacks, database migrations, and then everything from today to our test fixtures migrations. We'll rename these one by one. Sorry. It helps if you actually put an asterisk at the end of this. Asterisk. There we go. GST. Okay, there's all of our stuff. What do we need from this? We don't actually need create posts. I don't know where that came from. So let's remove this, and then we'll rename these. Let's get into just a little scratch pad here. Let's rename these into, let's move that into what it's called, but we won't care about this. We'll just say belongs to many alias. I'll get rid of the create and this part. Okay. Whoops. Let's go back down to the bottom. Get all that stuff. Whoa. I don't care. Do it. All right. So now we have test fixtures for those things. Migrations. A little bit better of a name. The dashes might not be the right thing, but I can clean that up later. Yeah, we do dashes. We do dashes. Let's clean it up again. So same drill. Let's move that with that, and then, oh, that's gonna be gross. Well, it's okay. We have multi-line. Belongs to, there's probably a faster way to do that, but I don't know it. Ah! Oh my goodness, escape. There we go. Owner pet. All right. Tab those out. Oops. Why is it only, oh, I'm in Markdown. I was like, why is it line breaking in a weird way? There we go. Okay, that feels a little bit cleaner. All right, let's go make the actual test now. Let's see it failing. Again, we might not make it past today, but let's get it failing, because I think that's the hardest part. And there's also not a lot of streams where people like focus only on testing. So this is kind of turned into like a bug hunt testing stream instead of a writing code stream, but that's okay. Okay, we have the migration. This is our fixture. Let's go into features. Let's go into generators. Let's go into migration. All right, and this is going to be pretty specific. So let's go see where we do this other belongs to stuff. And we actually say database migrations, timestamp create conferences. Where do we use the other belongs to many? Here we go. Let's borrow this test case because I feel like it's good. And let's kind of remap it to ourselves. So we can say using alias output also aliases pivot table migration. There we go. That feels pretty good. Okay, so we leave all the rest of this alone. It's just changing out the timestamps. We do need to clean up the way in which it generates these. So I think instead of journeys, instead of anywhere it says journeys, we'll make it, oops, boop, there we go, too far. Instead of anywhere it says journeys, let's do this customers. And then instead of anywhere it does diary journey, we want to now call this owner pet. And then we also need, how come we don't have all of our fixtures here? Output also generates, did I scroll up too far? What's going on here? Where's our code? Here's our code. What happened? Journey, give me you. Okay, why is the next thing not named journey? Oh, because we're not following convention here. Okay, these are kind of messed up fixture names, that's why. See, this is why I spend a minute to get the fixture names right, because now these are wrong and I'm not able to do auto select now. Okay, so let's just do them by hand. This is gonna be owner, pet, poet, I did it again, pet. All right, and then this will be belongs to many, alias customers, right? Alias customers, there we go. All right, and then this will be alias pets, belongs to many, alias pets, and then let's do belongs to many, owner, alias owner owner pet. Okay, cool. And then the YAML belongs to many using alias. Okay, now let's go take this and we'll copy from L13, not there yet, L12 hacks draft file now becomes that. Oh, sorry, fixtures. Test fixtures that. Oh man. I wish I could type. Okay, GST. All right. I think now we should vendor bin PHP unit that filter that. We definitely want to see it explode. Okay, what's it telling us? It's telling us that, it's telling us a couple things. Customers. Okay, so first of all, our numbering is wrong. Our date numbering is wrong, which is a little bit strange. Second, here's what it's doing. It's making, okay, so minus the numbering being a little wrong. It's taking, the numbering's wrong because it's generating 4 migrations, which is what it did in the L12 project. It made 4 because it made an extra one for the alias, right? This one, if it didn't have the ... here, would say owner table, right? So we need to make this one go away, and then we need to make the owner table one the correct name, and that'll get us back to 3, which should clean up the numbering. So this is actually a good, it looks a little clunky, but it's actually a good failure because it's generating 4 migrations, which is exactly what it did in the L12 hacks app where we ran this ourselves. So this is a good test. It's set up well. Let's see what time it is. Okay, I got about 10 more minutes. Let's see if we can make just this one pass. Because the model one, I don't think the model one's very hard. It's generating the code. It's just a matter of like plugging in owner in the right spot. This one, on the other hand, it's kind of weird that it's making 4 migrations. So let's go see if we can at least figure out why it's making 4 migrations. So if we get down into Blueprint Analyze, if we get down into our migration generator, let's see where and how it's determining to generate more stuff, right? Let's check this out. So everything in Blueprint, at any of the generators, starts with output. Output basically just does a loop and generates all the stuff. Now, this thing knows, models know about their pivot tables. So there's part number 1. Okay, so it loops over the models. It makes a table to populate the stub no matter what. Okay, so let's just add a line break here. Okay, so first things first, it makes the model table itself. Then it loops over pivot tables. What's interesting to me here is that this thing seems to now have 2 pivot tables. I'm starting to kind of guess in my brain what the actual problem thing is here. Okay, so I bet you if we dump model pivot tables, I think we're going to see what's interesting here, and I actually kind of guessed this when we were looking at the issue in the first place. So let's dump this out. There you have it. There you have it. There you have it. Yes. Okay. And I kind of said this earlier when my brain was getting a little twisted here about belongs to many relationships. But in the back of my mind, I think that's why my brain wasn't reconciling this. Here's the issue. Blueprint does not account, it does not unique the pivot tables effectively. From a developer standpoint, it should be running some kind of unique pivot table thing there. Because you have this multi-directional belongs to, even though that's correct to map them both ways, as we read in the documentation, the inverse relationship is a belongs to many relationship as well. Because you have 2 of them, it's getting stored in that model as 2, and then it's not getting deduplicated because of this, right? Customer and pet is not equal to customer and pet because of the additional bit there. So 2 things need to happen here. One, this is where it gets a little funky. This might take a little thought beyond the stream. These need to be deduplicated, but in the process of deduplicating, it needs to be prioritized. The one with the alias needs to be prioritized. That's the problem. That's the problem. And you know what? I want to prove something here to see if there's a bug or not. I want to actually prove something here to see if there's a bug or not. This is going to be a little bit difficult to do. I don't think we can change. Where's our alias? Where's our new alias file? Yeah. You kind of need a way here. Like, you can't say owner there. You can't do that. But that's my point. What I'm thinking here is, like, technically speaking, when you're defining this, you kind of need to say, like, oh, well, I aliased this belongs to many, right? Because actually customer needs to know, even though I'm saying pet, you're still going to have to specify the proper table name there. So it's kind of like Blueprint needs to be smart enough. Blueprint needs to be smart enough that in a scenario like this, it needs to go in and kind of like collapse the model pivot tables. I think if I pre-collapse the model pivot tables, then kind of everything would just work right. Everything would just work, I think. Now the generation of the name needs to be a bit better, but for the most part, it would actually just work. So I think going back to like the bugs that exist here, if we kind of jump over to the generating of the two pivot tables is definitely part of the deduping issue. The change of the relationship method name, that's simple. That's just a string output issue. No big deal. The table name to the belongs many call, again, is also just a string output issue, but it actually exists in both the model output as well as we saw the migration output. So, you know, if you could order these, like, this is actually, the generating of multiple is kind of the biggest problem, but I think this is the next, and then everything else after that is really just string output, right? It's just not choosing the right bit of data to output. So with the last few minutes, here's what I want to do. I want to find where pivot tables get set. So we set this based on segments. So add pivot table, okay. How many places add pivot table? Add relationship. Okay, so if you have belongs to many, then we add pivot table. Okay, fine. Add relationship. It's not really the Lexer's job. Okay, so since we have this add relationship and this add pivot table, here's what needs to happen. Add pivot table needs to be smart enough to now analyze the existing pivot tables and effectively return if it's already been added. And I bet you if you look at like some of these other ones, they might have something like that. Maybe not this one, but I think there's like a tables or something in here. Or columns maybe does that. One of these does that. I guess columns would just overwrite itself. This is kind of the problem, and I think you could drive this out in a test of model itself, which I'm sure I have if we look at the test cases. No. Do we have like a model test? No, we don't. Okay, everything's tested through. So the model's just kind of like truly kind of like a modeling layer. It's just a DTO, like it's just a data object. It doesn't have any direct tests because everything gets tested through the other integration style tests. But here's what needs to happen. We need to get, let's dump okay, we're sorting them here already on name. So let's dump segments when this actually gets added. We should see the same thing because it's just being saved directly. So if we dump this, yeah, we're getting an unsorted pet customer owner, blah, 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 blah. Okay, so let's go back to this. We didn't actually end up changing that. That's all good. Before we actually add, okay, we need to see if the same models exist. See if a pivot table for the same models exists. That's what we need to do right here. You shouldn't be able to add one if it's already in there. However, here's the tricky part, and this is kind of where I was thinking we might need a test for this to really kind of dial it in. But if so, we would basically, I think if so, we would overwrite if contains aliases, right? So looking at let's go back, let's run this again, and kind of just looking at the data set, here's what happens. Right now we have 2 of them in here, right? We don't want 2. What we want is, okay, hey, customer pet is the first one, and then customer pet owner, that one has a higher priority. So that's the one that should actually get taken. You're not defining both of these in the same model though. Actually, I don't think this code goes here. I'm second guessing myself now. I don't think this code goes here. I think this code actually goes here. Before, if they're not empty, here this is where we would actually to do, deduplicate, let's say deduplicate pivot tables, prioritizing aliases. Yeah. That's going to be some interesting logic. I think if we did this, it would pretty much fix all of the migration stuff. It would not fix the model though. Doing this in the model, especially for pet, is going to be difficult. That's going to be a big one. And here's kind of the other thing, like segments, if it can, okay, so is custom, if it's custom, yeah, see, we're supposed to, I see. This is also where the bug is. Yeah, we shouldn't return table here. We shouldn't actually return table here. We would replace segment. Yeah. And we also only do it for the first. It's kind of like we need to like array map it. This array map needs to be, this all just needs to be condensed. It shouldn't return here. Let me go back to the docs, and I think this is where we'll finish up. If we go back to the docs, what we're saying, in the case of belongs to many relationship, an alias will also be used as the pivot table. Here's kind of the real issue here. The real issue is that this segment, this little segment, that little segment's doing too much. It's way too powerful. It's attempting to specify the alias of the function. It's also the alias of the pivot table name. It does too much. This is wrong. The root, I'm seeing it now. The root issue, it's taken like 35 minutes, but the root issue here is that this little bit of data does too much. Because now, being familiar with the code, it's doing what it says actually. In the case of belongs to many relationship, an alias will also be used as the pivot table name. It doesn't say for the model of the pivot table name. It says as the pivot table name. That's correct. Now it's still generating the conventional pivot table name. It shouldn't be doing that. We can fix that here in a minute. But that still needs to be fixed. I'm not going to fix it in a minute, but that still needs to be fixed. But in reading this now, after looking at the code and looking at Blueprint, This is correct. An alias will also be used as the pivot table name. Blueprint will automatically pluralize the alias correctly based on the relationship type. In the case, okay, so you may also alias any of the relationships to give them a different name by suffixing the model name, by appending the model name with a colon followed by the name. For example, can you alias belongs to? I think you can. Yeah, the syntax just gets really, 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 really tricky with pivot tables and more complex relationships. It's difficult because I want to fix the bug. But it's in situations like this, you kind of have to ask yourself, where's the real bug? Is the real bug in the documentation? Is the real bug in how it's used? Again, I kind of went down this road naturally a minute ago. This should probably be called owner, because then Blueprint knows at each level what the actual underlying alias is. Doesn't matter that it belongs to. You're providing an unconventional name. Now it's not aliased owner in the customer context, because that's the pet, so they didn't alias it here. So I feel for the developer, this is kind of the natural way I think you would write this. I feel like this is kind of the intuitive way that you would write this. You're saying, hey, this relationship is called owner. But what you're also kind of expecting Blueprint to do is not only name the relationship owner, but then know too that the owner portion is only the customer side of the pivot table name. So it's like, what do you fix, right? Do you fix the documentation? Do you fix the code? Do you say... There's definitely a bug here. Blueprint kind of needs to pick a lane and stay in it. And right now it's kind of, again, it's trying to do too much with one thing here. There's definitely a bug. It's doing too much with one thing. I think what this should say... I'll take a drink and think on this. What I want to do is I think I want to end the stream here. I want to look at how and where other relationships are used inside the test fixtures. And I want to see what they do in those contexts. And again, I think we're just in kind of in a gray area, because belongs to many is kind of the only relationship that creates a pivot table. I'd have to verify that. But it's definitely one of the few, if not the only one, that creates a pivot table. Now the polymorphic stuff, they definitely create another table, but they're referenced through the data, so like there's already a blurb here. I think probably what needs to happen is this should say, in the case of belongs to many relationship, in the case of a belongs to many relationship, the alias will be used, to alias that model, of the pivot table name, right? The alias will be used for that model in the pivot table name. There you go. That's what this should say. In the case of a belongs to many relationship, the alias will be used for the model name in the pivot table. For the model in the pivot table name. Sorry, the alias will be used for the model in the pivot table name. There you go. I'm going to go back and watch my own video to type that correctly right here. That's what that should say. So we're back to it. That's the way it should work. This should replace customer when it's building out that pivot table, and then because it's aliased, it's prioritized in the code. It's prioritized here in the code, right? When it actually generates them. So it doesn't end up generating 3. or sorry, it doesn't end up generating 4. It only generates 3. And then the tricky part will be to have the model needs to then know, you know, hey, I'm customer, I belong to pet. Go look at pet and make sure it doesn't have a custom, you know, a custom belongs to many name, right? And if it does, then use it, because use it for the table name. That's where it's going to get a little bit tricky. For Blueprint to kind of reach across the models and know, okay, hey, I'm about to generate the relationship method in the model for customer. Okay, it belongs to pet. Go look at pet and see if it's customized itself, and if, you know, and vice versa. So like, that's where it gets a little weird. But again, intuitively, this is, you know, I understand why the developer feels this should work, and I'm in agreement with the developer. This should work, but I think a couple things need to be tweaked. Not only the code, but also the documentation. There's definitely a couple bugs here. So I'm gonna get those patched up next week. I just want to think how and where aliases are used in other relationships, particularly polymorphic relationships, and make sure that I'm not gonna introduce another bug or a change in the way that those work by fixing this way. Because if so, then kind of back to the drawing board, right? So it goes. See you next week.